All right, everyone, it's time to analyze Donald Trump's first mainline rally, held, of course, the other day in Waco, Texas. Of course, it's still the same day for some of you if you're like on Pacific time, because, of course, I'm over here in the Netherlands. The tulips are going to start to bloom. It's a wonderful time. It's actually springy, finally. Link in the description, not archived, of course. This is just from Donald Trump's own Rumble channel, which is the main video platform that he's using. I think it cross-posts with Truth Social itself for what it is worth. I think Rumble as a standalone site is probably bigger than Truth Social. Here are some thoughts. Firstly, Ted Nugent doing the Star Spangled Banner Jimi Hendrix style was pretty funny. Not as good as Hendrix maybe, but he did a pretty good job. Some people thought it was being disrespectful. I'm not sure if that's a tongue-in-cheek reference to the original Jimi Hendrix instrumental Star Spangled Banner from Woodstock, or whether they're being serious. Just thought I'd point that out. Notably absent, I believe, was Greg Abbott. Very funny, since it's taking place in Texas. And of course, people are harping on the date and location. Of course, at this time, 20 years ago, the Waco siege was going on. It's probably a reference to that, likening what's happening with the persecution and witch hunting against Trump, J6, etc., and Waco, in which a bunch of people were immolated by the U.S. government on false pretenses. That is the truth, that they were lit on fire by the federal government for literally committing no crime. Some people were saying the other day, by the way, when I pointed this out, well, Koresh was a pervert. Well, that's not why they were there. The warrant was issued because some people complained about automatic weapons fire coming from the compound there. No automatic weapons, to my knowledge, were ever found, and then the CIA came in and cleaned up the site awfully quickly. It was completely scrapped and bulldozed. Very interesting. All that evidence gathering that never happened. Anyway, as far as the rally itself, as far as Trump's speech, it's about 90 minutes long. Again, link in the description. You can watch it at your leisure. Good speech overall. One thing that Trump is, you could say that for primary purposes it's wise, but it's not necessarily the greatest lead up to a general, which is that what he's been doing is releasing campaign snippets every other day, basically, for months now, in which he addresses singular issues. You know, this is what I want to do with the border. This is what I want to do about tech censorship. That was literally the first thing he covered. That was a wise move, and he knocked it out of the park for me. Basically sealing the deal for me, just with his first video clip, by the way, because it's so important. And the ideas that he came up with, very, very good. Like a digital bill of rights and so forth. Here's what I want to do about the deep state in a general sense, blah, blah, blah. That's what he's generally been doing. When he gets up on stage and has 90 minutes, he could flesh out all manner of different topics. In typical Trump style, though, a lot of what you'll see here is him talking about what's happening now with the indictment circus, which may or may not even happen. Now Alvin Bragg has half walked it back. Well, you never gave a date. We haven't made a decision yet. Oh, by the way, we're reconvening the grand jury next week. Maybe we have more testimony. Maybe we'll make a decision. You have no clue, and I don't even know if Alvin Bragg fucking has a clue at this point. It's all topsy-turvy. For days, I've been told, today's the day, Blue and On. You don't have to wait 2 more weeks anymore. You're going to get to see Trump do the handcuffed perp walk. Hasn't happened so far. Interesting how that was so predictable to everyone that doesn't have a stick up their ass about Donald Trump now, isn't it? The trap is this. When you play up to your core fan base, which Trump believes is large enough to carry him over the finish line, assuming there's any serious primary at all. Again, the only potentially viable competitor hasn't announced yet. Some states may suspend the primary system because of his technical incumbency and simply allocate to him. There will be shenanigans, I'm sure, from the McConnellites of the party, but I think he's counting on the 40 to 45% hardened core fan base to vote for him, and then if there's more than like 3 other people in the field, it almost doesn't matter because nobody probably can match his numbers except in a few states, and he's pleased with that concept. The problem is that while you're whining and dining the core fan base by feeding them the red meat of, hey, look, it's a political persecution, which is true, I don't disagree with that, and it's part of the deep state, this is what we need to fight, this is the great machine driving towards World War III and persecuting people and pissing away your republic and your rights and so forth. That's red meat to the core fan base of MAGA. will already vote for Trump. I think he's trying to whip up higher turnout effectively for these races in the states. How does that translate to a general? Some right-leaning independent voters are amenable to that. Most independent voters and some other half-hearted, like MAGA Light and so forth, want more policy, though. So Trump's putting those out. But then he's going off into indictment land repeatedly when he actually speaks to larger crowds of people. And that could become a problem for the general election. He'd have to pivot and pivot fairly hard. Or at the end, he'd have to segue and smooth his way into talking about more policies. Of course, once he becomes the nominee, as I expect is likely the case, the indictment thing becomes entirely secondary. If he's the actual nominee of the Republican Party, it's going to be very difficult for two things to happen. Firstly, to justify any censorship of him on mainline platforms. The other major mistake he's made so far is not getting, for instance, back on Twitter. If anything, scrap Truth Social. You may alienate some of the people you're working with now. The payoff is bigger than the risk there, even if you have to absorb a loss. Or, under contract, I believe he can cross-post anyway. He simply has to post it on Truth Social a day or two beforehand, and then it can go on Twitter. That's perfectly fine as well. It's not as effective, but it's sort of a half measure. The problem for Donald Trump is that when I see the actual rally or live events that he's at, you're seeing similar energy to like 2016 or 2020, but you're not getting the same messaging because he's getting distracted. I think that could be a problem. The good thing about it, of course, is for his core fan base. And it's always interesting because you never know, like, is Donald Trump going to give a couple of really good jabs at this rally? So people tend to pay attention to, like, he's taken to calling Stormy Daniels horse face now, indicated that DeSantis was literally weeping when he asked for Trump's endorsement. I'm not sure. I don't believe that story, actually. Considering the polling at the time in that election, DeSantis very nearly lost against a dude who is currently in jail on fraud charges and who was found passed out, I think with a gay hooker and a bunch of drugs, if I remember correctly, not long after he lost to DeSantis. You remember that DeSantis won by like 0.3? Yeah, I think Trump's endorsement probably did push him over the edge and get him to victory. Of course, now he can stand on his own merit. He won by about 20 points in the last election, where Trump only semi-endorsed him. Does show DeSantis' strength, at least in Florida. So DeSantis cries when he asks for endorsement. We don't know if that's true. Trump says he never liked Horseface. Well, you did hang out with her a little bit, I think. And I do believe that he had sex with Stormy Daniels. It is very likely, in my opinion, that that story is true. Whether or not it was illegal to pay her off and or say, well, this is a legal expense, that's for Alvin Bragg's kangaroo court to decide, unfortunately. And I suspect that they lean towards indictment, but they may, in the end, they may get worried and say, well, we really want to, but is this really a good decision? We'll wait for one of these other legal cases. Hey, Blue Anon, stop worrying about Manhattan. Now, all eyes on Georgia or something like that. Also, good optics in another sense at his rally. Trump looks absolutely unfazed by the legal proceedings. And you'll note that the legacy media, if you look at literally every bit of reporting on the issue, is universally negative. They don't even talk about the platform issues that he did mention. They barely mention Ted Nugent's crazy guitar solo either. All they mention is, well, Trump was full of bombast, and all of the stories start up, Donald Trump, the loser who's under multiple potential indictments and who is clearly insane and lots of hyperbole, held a rally in Waco where clearly he's trying to butter up insurrectionists by likening himself to David Koresh or something like that. I mean, I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm seeing that in the reporting. Absolutely no attempt at journalistic ethics within this reporting. Not really much of an attempt to talk about any of the actual things that he talked about other than the indictment circus. That and Stormy Daniels. I almost think he throws Stormy Daniels and Ron DeSantis weeping in so the legacy media will have something to complain about other than the single issue of the Alvin Bragg case, which is a circus, socio-politically as well as legally. I'm almost thinking that's why he did it. So I think it hits most of the marks. Again, though, I would like to see Trump put in more of the actual issues and begin at some point to flesh them out more too. They remain rather sloganeered and basic. Now that's expected. Of course, the actual election is a long ways away, so I'm not going to criticize him for that. He should segue towards that, though. At some point, the indictment circus wraps up either in his favor or against him. That's no longer going to be really a talking point unless they say that we're not indicting, in which case Trump will take a victory lap. But again, you can't spend an entire year campaigning just on, hey, I beat Alvin Bragg. It's not going to be possible for him to do that. We need a little bit more meat on the bones, Donald. But overall, as far as the actual policies, largely in support of them. There are a couple of misses there. I think that you probably know which issues I'm talking about since I've analyzed them all. Overall, though, as far as the rally goes, the one complaint I would make is that I get more meaningful information. I say this as a high analysis voter as opposed to a partisan or low info voter. I would like to see it be more like the clips that he's releasing, like the 3-4 minute speeches where he talks about single issues that are actually of import to the nation. Yes, politicized indictment is definitely a pressing issue. It's good that Trump has the bully pulpit to talk about it. But it can't be 30-40% of the entire proceedings. It's not possible to make that into a general campaign. That's about all. Peace out.